Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy, I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. And today I would like to talk to you. I'm gonna change things up a little bit. I'm actually considering on rebranding the name of the channel, but it feels like this is Underrated Movies is really the best name I have for now with this. So I might just keep it, but I might start to change things a little bit on some of the content that I'm gonna do. It is still going to be about film. I've reviewed games in the past, but I've done it kind of as a quickie and as video games that I think will be good as live action adaptations. Like I talked about the Saboteur, Turning Point, Fall of Liberty, and then Black. And Black is specifically like a cinematic design game, but it to me those games with their stories can be adapted into features, especially the Saboteur. I think the Saboteur is heavily underrated. It's actually one of my favorite video games ever, and that game is really overdue for a remaster. I need to bring that back. But anyway, today's video, and the reason why I'm gonna do things a little bit differently here, and I don't like having a cheap phone, is I'm really gonna talk about movies that I consider are literally the most god awful movies I've seen. I swore I would never do that, but I don't know. Maybe there are a few movies that I could bring to the table that I firmly believe that are just not great films. Yeah, opinions are different from others, but to me, I just think these movies are just one of the worst I've ever seen. Even they may have some good qualities, couldn't get into these movies was either the story was boring or the way the construction of the story was made to or the filmmaking just didn't really resonate, or I feel like the story didn't do enough for me to really be fully invested in the runtime, and it was just boring. Anime is not included. I don't know if I would say if I've seen a worse anime, but on to it. And this is just on top of my head. I did wrote a list. I will say the franchise 50 Shades of Grey. I am to be the worst movies I've seen. And it's really not a film for me. I was obligated to see it. Anybody who was dating probably had to go watch that film. Positive thing I would say about the movie is that I really enjoy the cinematography of these films. Beautiful cinematography. You know, you have that fantasy of a rich man who's very dominant and very maybe assertive is the right word, but he also has a big sexual appetite to for a girl to try to tame him down for 3 films and to see all that. Like honestly, but I just didn't care the dynamic. I just didn't. The whole thing was just not great. I wasn't really invested where the story was going. The subject matter I was not interested in. And I remember seeing the first film. I remember I had some pretty, I was just say some bad food. I had some pretty good food. It's just I mixed the food with a bunch of stuff that just didn't make sense. And I remember seeing the first film, and I was struggling to get through that film, and I really had to go home. uh, I did happen to see the other 2 films, 50 Shades Darker and 50 Shades Freed. And it just wasn't a great film. You spent a good chunk of these 3 movies of these two really just back and forth of their relationship. And I remember that stalker guy, that storyline just came out of nowhere where he was all this handsome looking guy, has the same riches, like Gray, Christian Gray, right? And then I remember the last shot of that second movie, you see him all obsessed over the girl. And then you kind of want to know what happened. I'm like, this dude literally broke down. And the camera pans up, you see the fireworks, and the movie ends. I just remember that part. The rest of the movie was just god awful boring. And then I remember they finally, and added his plot line in the third film. They shoehorned his story as a stalker case, and I guess it's a sexy thing for girls to enjoy a film of a guy who's pretty much messed up sexually, but masculine, kind of just weird. Just jump through hoops to protect main character, Dakota Johnson. And I remember the finale, how she shot the guy. I don't know. The movie wasn't good. All three films wasn't good. The only good thing I would say is the cinematography of this movie. I'm just glad I was done with that franchise and I never had to watch it again. I'm actually glad that the adaptation teen drama books are done. That trend with the Hunger Games from 2012 to all the way to freaking 2017 or 18, man, that trend was so annoying where they had to adapt every dystopian teen drama romantic movie and get that made to like the Maze Runner to the freaking Divergent, which they only made two or three films. Didn't finish the franchise, or the franchise didn't finish. So it's up in the air. That's never going to get finished. And they have one thing after another, literally telling you the same story. I'm glad that's over. And I was working at a theater at the time, and seeing that trend really just expand. Actually, it was from 2008 to all the way to like maybe 2017. Twilight was a big hit. Twilight's on the list too. Twilight's on the list too, but I didn't see Eclipse, so I can't comment as the whole franchise. I didn't see the full last film, but I did see New Moon. I actually liked the first Twilight, and what saved the film for me was I liked the father character. I thought he was a great character, and I felt bad for his character. Really, he was trying to really reestablish a connection with his daughter, and I was probably the more interesting aspects about the film was to see a father daughter reconnect, and I really enjoyed their interaction and how that was directed, and I liked the actor. The actor was great in there too. Felt bad for him when Kristen Stewart had to tell him to leave her alone because in reality his life was in jeopardy because he had the vampires that were hunting Bella and her family. I think it was in the first movie. But I would say the worst one was New Moon, where Bella is grieving. People handle heartbreak well, and that's great. But that was pretty much the whole film. And then you had Taylor Lautner trying to come in, morphing into this Wolf Clan wolf. There wasn't really anything unique with it. The fight scenes from Twilight and then New Moon was actually great. I actually liked the fight scenes. That was really the only thing unique about these movies were the fight scenes. That's it. And Dakota Fanning was in it. Her character was kind of cool, but they didn't do much with her character. I'm not familiar with the novels anyway. For the duration of why I think New Moon was so bad is that dynamic between Taylor Lautner and Bella's character, and there's really nothing happening in the whole film until they went to the vampire world. That was when things really got interesting. That was literally an hour and 15 minutes into the movie. Everything else was just BS. Those two Twilight fight scenes were great. I'm going to let the first Twilight film pass because I was intrigued with it, but New Moon was just not great. Next, what I think is another film that I think is one of the worst ever made is Deliver Us from Evil with Eric Bana. It's a action horror film where it tries to balance horror and action. It's really about this police detective who gets partnered up, who's after a serial killer who is possessed by a demon. I think the construction of it was pretty bad. I think it was directed by the guy who did the remake, The Earth Stood Still, and then he might have done Doctor Strange, but I thought this film was not great. It just wasn't great. I thought the genre of action and horror was not good at all. And what had to be baffled was one particular scene, and it kind of sucks. Is I think what's the guy Joel Hale? He had the best performance in the movie for me, and that guy normally does comedy, but to see him in this kind of action horror movie and to see his performance really, I thought he was really one of the best aspects of this movie. But what really killed me of this movie, and I couldn't take the film seriously after that, was this action martial art fight scene between Joel Hale and the main protagonist. And the way this fight scene was shot, it made it into like your generic shaky cam handheld illusion fight sequence, and Joel Hale gets killed in the film in that sequence too. That movie, that sequence felt funny. It felt so out of place in the tone that they were trying to do. The movie had a very difficult time balancing genre of different tones of horror and action, and I thought the film failed on so many different levels. And the movie didn't work. I mean, Eric Bana was great in there too, but the movie just didn't work on the genre. The director did not know how to balance those genres together, and it's hard. It's hard. Okay, it's hard to do that. It's hard, but the movie just failed in that genre. I thought it was one of the worst action horror films I've seen, and it was not great. Actually, that was probably the only part I really remember that movie was that scene, but everything else was just not great. I remember seeing the film. It is just a film I don't ever really plan to watch again, but I remember it because of that scene, and I remember seeing the movie at the theater. Another film that I wanted to like so much, but when I saw it, it was another letdown, and I think it's just a terrible film. Was Green Zone by Paul Greengrass, and this filmmaker is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but and I remember how the trailer sold you on this because I think the plot of that movie, a group of U.S. demolition bomb disposal team led by Matt Damon and in the Iraq War, and his job is roam around in Iraq, investigate ongoing bomb plants in the city and disarm them. So there's like some sort of big conspiracy theory that goes on, and that there could be some U.S. ties that might be part of it for whatever reason. I don't remember much of the plot. The plot was so confusing, to be honest with you. It literally questioned every aspect about this movie, but they're also trying to get this guy who was also responsible for planting these bombs. There were just so many plot details that were complex from my understanding, and it just didn't. I just couldn't fully latch in onto it. And then another aspect of this movie was Paul Greengrass's style of shaky cam, especially for war action sequences like this. I did not like it. I did not like I didn't like it. I did not like that take of seeing that kind of action in a genre like this where you literally can't see nothing. And the movie was really like a Jason Bourne. What if Jason Bourne was placed in Iraq? And they sold the film like a Jason Bourne in Iraq. It's one of those movies where they're going to sell you a film to make it look like a certain film, but it's not a film when you actually go see it. And I get that's a good marketing strategy too. And I understand that. The film fails as is a plot to really understand and latch on into. The choice of shaky cam of the action scenes was annoying. So that was a disappointment. And I remember, and here's the thing. When I watch a movie and I heard it and I don't like it, I really have a tough time dissecting, or actually not dissecting, a tough time really making a decision whether I like the film or not there. So like I really have to take time to really think about it. And maybe that's fine. Because there's quite a few films on this list that that I literally had to think about. Ridley Scott's Robin Hood from 2010. And I think that's literally one of the worst movies I've seen in my life. It's so boring. There was nothing unique about the film at all. The action scenes weren't unique enough. They weren't. It was so boring. It was so boring. Like I just could not get into the movie. And I remember in that theater, and I was trying to figure out 30 minutes in what the story was, and I couldn't tell you what the story was. It's an origin story for Robin Hood, but the movie doesn't set up telling you it's an origin story of Robin Hood. It reveals it like it's a twist to really get into the story of Robin Hood. Plus, Russell Crowe cast as Robin Hood. The guy is, I think it was like late 40s or 50s at the time when he started that movie. It was 2010, 16 years ago. The movie didn't sell me as a Robin Hood film, and I wouldn't say there was a vibe aspect about the film that just didn't hook me in. And for an action film, I think this is literally one of the worst action movies I've seen, one of the most boring movies I've ever seen. and I couldn't really get into it, and it's a shame because I really enjoyed Ridley Scott's movies. But this is one of them where I felt for his style, he's a slow-paced filmmaker. He's more visual than story. Story does kind of come in later on into the film, but it slowly builds up, and it feels like a two-parter. Did not really establish the mythology and origins of Robin Hood as well that it could have. It felt as a generic medieval movie that just slapped the title of Robin Hood on it. And if it's a character, if it's a movie based off a character that has folklore, I'm expecting to have some sort of lore built literally in the first half hour of this movie. But the movie doesn't, and it asks you to settle in for 2.5 hours of following a story that may or may not be the main actual character, and it reveals it to be the actual character. And it was a weird choice. It was a weird choice. And I couldn't latch onto it because there was no lore to help back up that's the character. And that was a disappointing thing. And another and a film that I would say I had the same issue with is Ronald Emmerich's 10,000 BC. I think that movie came out in 2006. You know, that filmmaker is known for doing disaster movies like Independence Day 2012 and then the sequel Independence Day. And 10,000 BC, to me, it had the same issues with Robin Hood. Boring characters, boring hero, no origin. Because the movie is supposed to be about this origin hero who's literally supposed to be the first human being on Earth besides God to be the first hero to save people and to rid people from bad, corrupted government and all that. There was no story. There was no lore to back that up. That's what it was. There was no lore. The action scenes were boring, uneventful, and I could barely tell you because I only seen the film once, but I remember how I felt about the film, and there was no lore to build and sell me. That's what this film was trying to be, and that's what the movie failed for me. I've seen the film once. I'm never planning on watching it again. Neither Robin Hood. Neither Robin Hood. Don't care for it. Don't want to watch it. On my list is Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. The plot didn't make sense. I didn't really understand what was going on. You have these two characters that literally get caught with these characters from the Devil's Rejects, and they're it's like a clown house kind of horror movie, but it's a movie that was style over substance. I think the plot just wasn't really coherent enough, and the only thing I'm really curious about this aspect of this movie is how Rob Zombie got the film funded and made. His his thought process of independent filmmaking, and that's really it. I can't tell you really the uniqueness of this film because there is none. Um, the movie was a mess, and I was expecting something more intense, more terrifying, more gory, more bizarrely weird, just like The Devil's Rejects, which is a vastment improvement of a horror film. Now that's horror. House of a Thousand Corpses is not horror, and it's just a terrible film. Then I'm going to go with a Netflix film, and this is the film You People, starring Eddie Murphy and Jonah Hill, who also wrote the movie. And it's literally about this couple are in an interracial relationship, but the Jonah Hill's character has to impress um, his fiance's family, their parents, that he's the ideal guy for it. The reason why I think this movie sucked because the jokes don't land. It didn't land at all. It felt like a movie that was done 20 years ago. It reminds me of like the movie Guess Who with Bernie Mac and Ashton Kutcher, which is a way better film. And I'm tired, to be honest with you, I'm tired of the racism comedy in movies, especially from the black people perspective. I'm over it. I'm just over it. Like I just don't think that crap is funny anymore. But like stereotypes just to get a good gag. I mean, yeah, it's make fun of yourself. But that comedy has been overdone for so long. You had 3 decades of it. I'm through with it. I'm over it. There was nothing unique about this film. Maybe for the exception of the a moment where, and it sucks because the parents convinced their relationship was so bad for them that the two did end up breaking up, but they got back together again. But the movie was just awful. It was not funny. No likable characters. Nothing unique about the film really at all, or about interracial relationships and what they're saying about it. The jokes suck, and then I think the producer. I know he did the Blackish and all that. I'm not, I don't care for that kind of genre of comedy, but I did watch it. The movie was terrible. It's one of the worst comedies I've ever seen. Nothing in that movie was funny, and that's saying something. I actually watched the whole film, and this right here is a comedy film that I couldn't even finish. It's comedy is so hard now, especially if you're doing like a satire or anything like a spoof. I remember that trend of spoof movies that they did right after Scary Movie was so successful, and I'm glad they ended that crap because that was a terrible trend of movies. You had the superhero movie, yeah, date movie. Date movie was funny. Epic movie was terrible. Disaster movie was terrible. Couldn't finish it. And then one of the movies I tried to watch, and I literally only lasted 15 minutes of the movie of these spoof genres was Meet the Spartans. I didn't see the movie in theaters. I saw it on Stars TV came on, and I know those movies were cheap to make for studios to make a quick buck. The jokes suck. Only lasted 20, 15 minutes in, and I just turned the movie off. Just couldn't handle it. Just could not handle that film. It was just so terrible, and I'm glad that trend of movies are done because I know we just recently tested the waters by making a new Scary Movie 5, or was it 5 or 6? And just call it Scary Movie. I know there's a Scary Movie 5. I did not see the new movie that came out this year. Didn't see it yet. Might see it, but I haven't seen it. I'm glad that trend of movies are done because it's just it's fun. It's fun when you're a kid, but when you get older, those movies just don't. Those jokes just don't land. They don't land at all. And then another movie, a comedy that's has its takes of a satire, and that's the film Stop Never Stopping, that weird Andy Samberg movie of him being like a rapper in the movie is a parody of the rapper lifestyle, and it's like done like a documentary, like a mockumentary. It's a mockumentary comedy movie. And I saw that at theaters, but here's the catch. I only got through 30 minutes of the film. The movie's only around 82 minutes, right? So I got through half hour, and then after that half hour, I couldn't take it anymore. And I got a refund on those tickets. There was no punchline to the joke. There was nothing funny in the film. Like I can't even tell you. Actually, the part I might have left off was him. He was doing show and tell at his bling blings of his at his house. It's just the jokes sucked, and I have to give um, credit to writers. Like it's literally hard to test out a joke and to repeat the joke in film or stand-up comedy. It's really hard to write good jokes, and the film had none for its duration. And I think that was one of the rare times I actually walked out of a film and got a refund. I'd never really done that ever at a theater and never finished the film. Never. That's I think that was the only time that I got a refund on a movie and said I couldn't hack it anymore. Could not hack it anymore. That was awful. And another comedy. Surprisingly, it's another comedy. It's Tyler Perry's I Can Do Bad All by Myself. And that sucks since he did a teaser trailer, but I think that was a great teaser trailer of Medea in the movies. Like if y'all expecting like a good romantic prison movie, this ain't one of the movies. And then you have She's a Lady. It was so hippie and you know the trailer was awesome. That was a good marketing trailer. The movie had struggles of not trying to figure out what it wanted to be. The movie was battling such a so like the story was Medea goes to jail for winning parking ticket or whatever. I don't remember much of the movie, but she gets involved in this therapy session at prison. She eventually meets a woman who is being abused. One of the characters in the movie, I think she was also a single mom doing prostitution work. And eventually she gets arrested, and then they go through this therapy session. It's actually pretty hard for that style of comedy for Medea, where it's a little bit hippie and has its lighthearted moments. And then you also have a tone of a dark, depressing story of a chick who's really, you know, in that kind of a world of doing things for money that is not good, defiling the body, and to try to balance these kind of tones together and try to have that flow evenly. There wasn't a good balance of genre tones to really sell the movie, and the movie felt incoherent at times. I just remember that last sequence where Medea is dancing her way out of jail. Not a funny movie. I wouldn't recommend it. I think the best directed film that Tyler Perry has done is Medea's Family Reunion, and then his recent, well, define recent. He directed a pretty good war film with the triple 89, the movie Kerry Washington. That was actually pretty good. I think that was one of his best movies he's ever done, ever. You know, and I'm glad he's taking swings. This was not a good swing for him, and in fact, this is probably the worst film he's ever done. Uh, I have not seen his Netflix movie. Well, wait, that war film was a Netflix movie. I haven't seen all of his work. Haven't seen uh, haven't seen that one thriller he did on Netflix. Called I don't remember what it was called. But he's in it. He plays a lawyer. But anyway, that movie was not great. And I don't recommend anybody who is a Tyler Perry film that watches that movie. But found footage genre, it's The Devil Inside. Um, that's another trend of movies I was adapting into because I like the anxiety that the movie delivers. But that film, The Devil Inside, it is one of the biggest regrets of a movie I've seen. I remember the finale of how it builds up. I won't really say much of the film because I don't want to really discuss much of the film, but it's about this girl looking for her mother who is in Italy and who was possessed by a demon, and she's trying to find a way to bring her back. She's documenting it, having these priests follow her, trying to understand what got her mom to get all crazy and loony possessed. And the way the movie ends, all the characters get killed in a car. Well, actually, no, the main character somehow gets possessed and she's doing all crazy, weird stuff. And then the priest tried to take her to a church to get her exorcised, or try to perform an exorcism. And they're in the car. The girl touches one of the passengers of the car who was driving it. He ends up becoming possessed, but then he ends up crashing the car head on with another vehicle, and that kills everybody. You see everybody roaming around in a car, all killed and dead. And the movie ends, and then you get a website saying if you want to learn more, go to this website here. And everybody was like, this was a BS ending, bull ending. I've never seen a movie end like that before. And walking out of there, I remember a priest was literally telling people don't see this movie. And in fact, he was doing a good job. Yeah, don't try to see these movies anymore. Um, and this movie came out in 2012. I have not seen the extended cut of this movie, but it's another Ridley Scott film. And this is The Counselor, came out 2013, a film he did right after Prometheus. And this movie has at least two or three scenes I liked. Like I actually like violent scenes, action scenes that happen in the film. It's a crime thriller, so there's not much action in the film, but it's like action that happens to like the less supporting characters. So when it happens, it's like you don't feel much, but they were actually intense, and I applaud for that. But the story didn't make sense. It's literally about this nameless counselor. You don't know his true name, who is has ties to some criminal agent, underground world. Who a friend of his gets him excited to do a drug deal, but they don't really explore heavily into the drug deal. There's a lot of weird expositions that they mention in the film that they don't really elaborate on. Maybe a little, maybe for me, maybe being spoon fed some information that about the plot that seems coherent, that makes me understand the story a lot better. Uh, but there was none of that. So he makes a deal, and the deal goes wrong with some pretty cool scenes. There's some pretty cool scenes here, but the story was weird. And then there's this weird iconic scene of Cameron Diaz humping the bar in a flashback sequence. It's a funny scene. The scene felt out of place for a very bleak movie. That scene could have been into like a dark comedy. And it's a weird scene, but it's a funny scene actually. So that's probably it's a funny weird scene. Cameron Diaz was amazing actually in this movie. Her performance was riveting, and she has the chops of being like a good villain, and that's something Hollywood just doesn't like. Man, there are some actors out there that can, they typecast certain actors in roles, but she was very villainous in this movie, seductively villainous in this movie. The story, it was tough to follow. The way the movie concludes was just, it leads one thing after another, and it doesn't lead to anything at all, where it doesn't have much of an impact. It's probably Ridley Scott's boldest movie, and it's a movie that fell flat for me. The story didn't make sense. And I walked out of here thinking this movie sucked. It was a piece of garbage movie. I don't have any interest in watching the extended cut. There's an extended cut to this movie. Now, I don't know if that improves the story flow of the film to add more story, because I didn't think the movie had enough story. I don't know. But I don't plan to really watch it. I don't care enough to watch an extended cut of this movie, because I thought the film was so bad. And I know there's other movies out there that I've seen that are probably, I think they're just not great. But yeah, these are the films that I can think of reflecting back by memory that I know, in my opinion, are just terrible movies. Just terrible films, at least movies that I've seen. That's my take of some of the worst movies that I've seen in my lifetime that I can remember. If any of you guys, and I'm sure there's plenty of you that have the worst movies of all time on your list, tell me at least five of them that you can think that are just terrible freaking movies that you just hate to death or would never watch again. Comment below, let me know what you think, and let me know what is your favorite underrated movie, y'all.